5 minutes past 10, our talkback lawyer David Whiting is here to help you with free legal advice. 1300 222 774 is the number if you'd like some free legal advice. 1300 222 774. David, good morning to you.
Good morning, John.
We've exercised great restraint over the last month, not talking about something that many people have asked us to talk about, which is the fact that you were a candidate for election to the board of the RACV for reasons which, if you think them through, become a bit clearer, to do with the ABC maintaining arm's length independence. We never raised it with you while you were a candidate, but that election is now concluded. What happened?
I got done, John. I got done.
You got done? You mean you did not get elected to the board?
I did not get elected, and I got defeated by a more convincing majority than last time.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, part of the difficulty, John, was that last year the then chair wrote to the 30,000 proper members of the RACV and wrote a letter of endorsement. And afterwards I said to the chairman that it was horribly unreasonable to write a letter of endorsement to but 30,000 of the 1.2 million people eligible to vote. So the response this year was that the voting papers contained a letter of endorsement for the chair for the two candidates, and a proxy
when I got my ballot paper, it basically said there was an accompanying letter together with the ballot paper saying, from the chair of the board, I recommend you vote for the people who are already on the board.
Yes.
Which personally I thought was somewhat inappropriate, but I presume it's not against the rules or they would have been stopped.
The difficulty, John, is that the Constitution says there will be an election, and the bylaws say, and the board will determine how the election is conducted.
Yeah.
So the board decided in its infinite wisdom that it would include with the ballot paper, which is intended to decide who the members will be, an endorsement from the chair. Now, what that was worth in terms of votes, I've got no idea.
Does that happen in other organisations?
No.
Does it happen in publicly listed companies, for instance?
There was, the only reported case I found involved St George Building Society, and St George, but that was before it was converted to, before Westpac bought it, and because it's now part of the Westpac group. And it essentially says, a New South Wales Supreme Court case says, yes, you as a board can endorse candidates, but you ought to pay for it. It shouldn't come out of members' funds.
It is a club. It can conduct its affairs. Even though it's a very,
John, it's very
large club.
No, it's not.
RACV.
Yes, the RACV is... The problem, John, is what's a member?
And what's a club?
No, well, first of all, it's a company, which is okay, but there are 30...
it's a club that's turned itself into a company.
There are 30,000 members who have the right to vote at general meetings and to change and amend the Constitution.
Yes.
There are 1.2 million people who buy roadside service from them, and they are called members. In the same way, John, as if you get on a Qantas flight, you're a passenger. If you get on a Virgin flight, you're a guest. Mm-hmm. But you're still a passenger, as we would understand the term. Mm-hmm. So now those 1.2 service customers are described in the Constitution as members, and they have the right to vote for a particular class of director.
Yep.
But they have no right to vote at an annual general meeting.
Or about any changes to the rules.
No, none at all.
Only the 30,000 do.
Only the 30,000 do.
And which is still a lot of people.
Yep, and there's another 900,000 people that they call relationship members. Mm-hmm. And they don't have a vote. And what they generally, as a practice, will be is they'll buy a home assist package or an insurance product.
Oh, that's in addition to the 1.2 million roadside assistance people.
They claim 2.3 million members.
Okay, but some of those just have insurance products or some other connection, but they don't have a vote at all.
No, and there's about 900,000 of those. There's about 1.2 million people who are described by them as service members. So it means you get the promotional material every month, but they don't get a vote other than they have the right to vote for half the board.
As matters stand, and I don't intend to bang on about this for long, it's a pretty well-run organisation. I'm sure it would have been even better if you were there, but you can't really complain about the way it conducts its affairs because it's been very successful.
It has been very successful.
And when we've run
It's interesting, John, I had lots of complaints, lots of comments about it moving from a motorist organisation to a leisure organisation.
Yeah, but when we've had complaints about, for instance, bushfire insurance policies, the RACV, and I say this with all the independence of the ABC in my mind, and undoubtedly they have been the first to resolve, and usually on better terms, complaints about them.
Yep.
I'm not saying there weren't complaints, there were, but they would always resolve them rapidly, expeditiously, and in my view, fairly generously, compared to what, for instance, the Royal Commission has just told us about AAMI.
Yes.
So, they've always, I think, in that sense, been a little different. But, Condole, are you going to have another go?
I don't know, John. It's too early. It's too early. I'm currently licking my wounds.
I can well understand. The front page of the Financial Review tells us about a tax office crackdown on tax avoidance, in particular by high-wealth individuals and multinationals, including large mining companies. They've already collected $5.6 billion in the last few years out of a projected target of they think they'll get 10. But one of the tricks being used is now some corporations and individuals, every piece of correspondence they send, every email or every letter, is addressed through their lawyer, so they claim legal privilege on everything so they can try and stop the tax office getting hold of anything.
Well, then
surely you can't do this.
Well, my view is that legal professional privilege applies to the seeking of advice and the giving of advice. And so the question, my view is you would look at each document and say, is that what it's there for? Now, there have been a couple of cases run in the Victorian Supreme Court involving one of the companies on the front page of the Financial Review that in fact addresses what's legal, what particular documents are covered by legal professional privilege.
Specifically, rather than trying to have a blanket everything go away, you're not allowed to have a look at any of our documents.
Yeah, I think the answer you need to actually say, well, was it brought into existence for the purpose of obtaining advice?
But if you're not allowed to look at it, how do you argue that? If the tax officer told you there's a blanket absolute screen here, you cannot access anything.
Well, the problem, John, is it will go too far the other way and then you won't be able to get advice at all unless you share it with the Commissioner on the way through.
So the tax office is basically, unless they challenge this through to the High Court,
yes,
they're finished. Everyone will start doing this and no one will ever
that sounds positive for lawyers, John.
No one will ever have to give the tax office any documents ever again. And you can't have a tax system that works like that.
You can't. You've got to have a tax system that allows you to fairly tax and recover. Yep.
And scrutinise.
Yes.
Otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah.
All right, anything else?
Well, it changes in the law, John. There's Tasmania has proposed laws that will have the effect of will create an offence of failing to report a serious crime. Now, it arises in relation to the federal, the Royal Commission institutional responses to child abuse,
right?
And it's aimed at this stage at preventing. Requiring priests who are disclosed information in confessional to disclose it, and that follows the ACT and South Australia. Haven't seen the legislation yet, but in broad terms, that's what it will do. I don't necessarily... I suppose it's the difference between the temporal law and the civil law, John. Yep.
Well, the churches forever in this country have claimed a special status, and that's being chipped away at because of their own scandals.
It's interesting, John. It's only in Victoria. It's only in circumstances where the confessional is part of the established regime of the religion. So, if you were making a statement to someone where that wasn't part of the structures of the church, then that provision doesn't apply.
All right. Any other things?
Question, John. If you were a reporter and you took a picture off Facebook, there's an action being run at the moment by a woman whose daughter's photo was taken off Facebook and put in
to illustrate a story in the
was
press.
A story about them.
Yep.
In the Women's Day and New Idea, and the mother has now taken them to court on the basis that it's more than fair reporting, and she was no permission, no acknowledgement or attribution, and she's claiming breach of copyright in the images. So, we will see.
Oh, that's good, because it's about time some of these new media entities stopped pretending that they're not publishers. And
this is an old media. This is Women's Day and New Idea taking a picture off Facebook.
Yep. And being told you can't, but in fact it comes down to whether Facebook owns the images you put on there.
The complaint is by the person who took the picture.
Sure, but if they take a picture and put it on Facebook, are Facebook publishing it, in which case it's in the public domain? Or is it your private information and Facebook are not a publisher?
No, copyright doesn't work quite that way. If you were to publish a photo and done it, and say they put a photo up of that you'd taken at the gallery, and I went and took a photo of it, that could be, my use of that photo could be a breach of your copyright in the image.
If you've asserted your rights still to own that copyright of that image, but if you've put it in the public domain...
Well, you mean put it on display?
By putting it on display, you may not be surrendering your copyright, but you're giving people an implied licence.
No, I don't. I'm not sure that you are, and that's what the argument is.
That's what has to be discussed here. Yep. Fascinating. All right, let's get to callers. 1300 222 774. Stephen Carnegie, good morning to you and welcome. You're through to David.
Hi. I've been wondering about the obligations on real estate agents and its relation to indicative pricing at an auction. And I thought there was law brought in that said that if an agent gives out indicative pricing, that they're then obliged to accept. No?
No. What they've endeavoured to do is change the behaviour of agents. Yes. They haven't changed the behaviour of vendors. Right. So what happens is that the agent's got to produce comparative sales, the agent's got to produce an estimate of the range and be able to justify the estimate that is produced, but it doesn't require a vendor to accept a bid.
Although a vendor signs a document with the agent.
I signed an authority to sell yesterday, for a client, for a property that I'm selling as an executor.
Right.
And the document contains the agent's estimate of the price, but it doesn't require me to disclose a reserve.
Oh, okay. So that's all fairly
so what
in the end.
The answer would be, I don't have to sell if I don't want to. If I don't like the price, I won't sell. But the agent's not allowed... has to be able to justify what they tell me as the vendor and has to be able to justify what they tell prospective purchasers.
Okay.
Right, so that they're becoming more a person... I know they get paid by the vendor and they're looking after the vendor's interest primarily, but the aim is to stop encouraging you to come along to an auction because the property's going for a price that you can afford when in fact clearly you can't.
Yeah, they're trying to get rid of that underquoting, overquoting thing, depending on whether you're the seller or the buyer.
Yes, that's what they're trying to. They're trying to fix the real estate industry. They're not trying to tell you that if you sign with an agent, you must sell your property.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Thank you, Steve.
Did you buy something eventually, Steve?
No. I'm just playfully looking around and deciding I won't sell and won't buy. But
you're looking for that bargain that everyone else is looking for too.
Oh no! Well, I was just interested in it. I mean, I was involved in selling my mother's house recently, and thought that when I looked at what the legislation said, I thought that it said that we were obliged to accept the lower price if it came up.
Oh no!
No.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, good to see you. Thanks.
And let's go to Heidelberg next. Barry, good morning to you.
Good morning, blokes. Enjoyable show, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a commercial traveller and I spend a lot of time travelling in the country over the week. And over last 6 months, I've been stopped a couple of times for the booze, on the side of the road. No problems with that, I don't drink, but I've had trouble with the licence card. I've held up the licence card. I understand that you have to present it for inspection.
What do you mean the licence card? Your driver's licence?
Yes.
Yep.
Now, I've held it up, presented for inspection, but it's been ripped out of my hand. Do I have to hand the licence over, or is presenting for inspection holding it up so they can take...
Sorry, a police officer says, can I see your licence?
Yes.
You hold it and show it to them, but then they physically take it from your hand, and you don't want to let go. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. I had the misfortune of one in a traumatic accident many years back of it not being returned to me, and I've read the regulations and I think I understand it right, but I could be totally wrong.
What, that you have to produce your licence, but you have to physically hand it to the
You
police
have to
officer?
produce your licence for inspection upon a request or a demand.
Right.
That's the wording?
Does that
Very
mean,
close to it, yep.
Does that mean you have to hand it over to the police?
Well, I think the technical answer is no, but if I can't read it clearly, then you haven't facilitated my inspection of it. Otherwise, you just might leave it on your lap and wave it around a little bit.
Yes. No, I've deliberately held it up between my two fingers and presented it in very close proximity to the eyesight of the police person.
And they simply then take it, as probably if I was to offer my driver's licence to you, you would as well.
Well, but I do say I'm presenting it as per the regulations, but you're not touching it.
You do say that, do you, Barry?
In a gentle way. Don't be aggressive or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the last time, I got out of my vehicle, and it was ripped. Either give it to me or we'll arrest you. And it was ripped out of my hand, and my arm was twisted up my back. And I was just wondering, what is the real situation or the lawful situation?
My thoughts, Barry, are that the question is how do you allow them to inspect it? Now, I'm quite happy to have a discussion about what the law precisely says, but I would have thought that if you were presenting a card to me and it wasn't absolutely broad daylight, then I would tend to pick it up and look at it rather than leave it where you're holding it. I've got to say, in this case, I'm on the police's side.
Barry, you are likely to annoy the police, which is never a good idea, especially over something so trivial.
You're right, John.
Mm-hmm.
But then, by the same token, I'm a lawful citizen. And
yeah, but I think most police would just think you're being a smart aleck.
And I can't see that I'm in favour of making the police's job any harder than it is now.
But it's a clear card, and I put it up within their vision. They can,
what's the point? What's the point of digging in your heels over something so trivial?
Well, because I had the experience of one being not returned to.
Yeah, well, I once nearly got run over crossing a pedestrian crossing. It hasn't stopped me crossing the road.
Fair comment, John.
All right.
Fair comment.
I really think you can make life very difficult for yourself if you really want to, but I can't really quite see the point.
But what's the lawful position of it? Do they have to?
Then I will tell you next week, but my preference would be you give them a card to read it, then you move on faster.
Yeah.
Yes, fair comment. Okay.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
I mean, sometimes it's not really a matter of what the black letter legislation says, is it, David? It's a matter of custom and practice.
Yeah, I'd say they're certainly entitled to inspect it. And the question is, if I produce it, am I producing it if I hold it 2 feet away? Don't know.
And if you're still there, Barry?
Yes, John.
Yeah, I've got a text from someone who says they're a police officer saying you're asking for trouble if that's your attitude. And Richard from Port Melbourne says you're failing the attitude test if such a thing exists.
Well, I think I'm upholding my civil liberties.
Yeah,
as
well,
an
I guess
honourable, law-abiding citizen.
At your peril, I'd say, Barry.
Well, it's a sad state. But anyway, I look forward to listening to David next week.
Okay,
Alrighty, good
thank you,
on
Barry.
Joanne in Gisborne. Morning, Joanne.
Good morning. I was just wondering if you have a small estate that's just a single bank account, do you have to go through probate, please?
No, you don't.
Oh, good.
The probate offers protection to the people who pay over the money.
Yes.
So if there's a bank account with under $20,000 in it,
right,
then you write to the bank's deceased estate section, you give them a copy of the will and the death certificate, and they will offer you the ability to give them an indemnity.
$20,000 is the limit.
It varies between the banks.
For the whole estate or just the balance of the bank?
The estate.
Right.
Right, so if the estate's our bank account and it's worth, say, less than $20,000, some of them might be 50, I'm not sure, but you go to them and you ask them to waive probate because it's the only asset that needs for which you might otherwise need it. They'll ask the executor to sign an indemnity, which basically says if you pay me the money and I shouldn't have got it, then I will give it back.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks. And so if you can just go into the local branch of the bank with those documents and they'll start the process for you.
All right, Joanne?
Thank you.
Okay.
So ask for the small estates paperwork.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good luck there. And Jeanette in Garden Vale. Morning to you.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Wonderful, because I get accused of mumbling underwater. Look, I'll try and be succinct, which is not one of my, in my DNA. But
We can tell that, Jeanette. Yep.
Thank you. already good. My son had a stroke, and a really nasty stroke, without attendance for 3 days. And as a result, he struggles. He's trying to get his life together, and I told him not to sit home and to do some charity work, volunteer work, but he's got nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yep.
And I had to get power of attorney because he can't take stress. And I got him onto Centrelink. I got him, and then he didn't tell me, but I found out that he had a huge debt for child support.
Yep.
So I took him to a solicitor about 9 years ago, and we made an offer to the I think it was her that could have wiped out the debt, all his super that he could access under special circumstances. And she refused to take it. And then he refused to let go of a little amount, $3,000 he wanted to give to his daughter, who there was a bit of acrimony there, so he gave that to her.
So, Jeanette, nothing. What's the question? He's got nothing.
The question is, he's got a huge debt with child support.
Why is the debt so large?
Because he can't afford to pay it off. He just pays interest. It's gone up to $53,000. Now, if he dies, who's responsible for that? I haven't got any money, and with an illness I have, I'll probably go first.
Jeanette, wait till next week, and I will tell you. Look, I don't want to say one or the other, but I will find out the answer, and I'll let you know.
Yes, because it's hanging over our heads, and I can't.
Well, it's never going to be your problem.
No,
all right.
True.
And he can sign a binding death benefit nomination for the super that's still there. That gives the money
There's
to
no
his.
super left.
It's all gone, has it? Okay. But in a sense, well, first of all, if there was less than $53,000, then some of it would not be paid. But at the moment, my guess is
if he's got absolutely nothing except a $50,000 plus debt on child support.
That's all he has.
Then nobody's able to get anything from him. If he dies in the current financial position, it really doesn't matter whether there's a debt or no debt. It just doesn't get paid.
No one inherits a debt from a deceased person, Jeanette.
Thank you for that. That's the answer I wanted to know.
Okay, thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you so much.
Whether it's a debt to child support or credit card or whatever else it might be,
it dies with you, John.
It dies with you.
Yeah. Can I jump in and ask one other question?
Far away.
I don't know, David. What do you think? Should Jeanette be allowed to ask another question or not?
She's already started, John.
Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. You're very kind. He hasn't even got enough money to pay for a funeral.
Yep.
And I love the way people say, well, donate your body to science. Obviously, I rang up the university and they don't accept everybody. They don't. There is a criteria.
So there are two choices that I can offer you, Jeanette. I mean, there is a process for a pauper's funeral. I'm not sure what that process is, and if the pauper's funeral, the state will bury you. There is also a possibility for something called an unattended cremation, and there are a number of organisations in Melbourne that offer them at what I would call at less than $2,000. And so they come and collect the body, they arrange for the cremation, and they return the ashes, and they arrange for you to get a death certificate. So that's an option. The other option is that you could talk to the university. They actually download the forms from the University of Melbourne website, and you can do it, and you can look at that as a possibility.
I've got lots of people joining in on whether or not you must hand over your licence to police, and I've got several people who, by the sound of it, work as police officers, saying if you're nice to us, we'll be nice to you. The driver's licence has very small print on it, which can only be seen when it's in good light and in your hand. And other people saying that the police take the licence and go and check it through the computer in their police car or on their motorbike in order to establish, first of all, that it's not fake. Secondly, that you don't have any outstanding warrants or other penalties against it.
Yep.
And they can't do that by only looking at it while you hold it still sitting in your car, all of which sounds very sound to me. Someone else saying, are you joking? You're telling someone that they don't have to just strictly comply with the law and they have to do more than that? What sort of legal advice is that? Well, I'm quite happy to take the rap for that rather than David.
I'm happy to say we shared it, John.
I don't have a problem with it at all. Yolanda in Vermont. Morning to you, Yolanda.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for your show. My son is 19 and was railroaded by a large retail car tyre place to replace a rim on his car and tyre. The issue is that once they put it in and installed it into the boot and said that it looked like it was oversized, and he then explained, yes, this is the largest size you can have for your car. But the problem was that it did look like it was too big.
Yes.
Anyway, they said legally, no, that's maximum size that this car can hold, so that's not an issue. Off you go, take your money, thank you very much.
Wouldn't you want the tyre to match the other 4?
It's the spare tyre.
Yes, but you would still want the rim and the tyre to be the same size.
Well, that's what he tried to explain to the guy. My husband went back the next day to this large retailer in Nunawading, but they were very,
You're getting very close, Yolanda. Let's not put any more effort into telling me who they are. Okay?
No, that's fine. And they insisted that was allowed. Yes, it was possible to have that, and it was okay. We couldn't fight anymore. We felt very intimidated.
Yes.
Why did you feel intimidated?
Oh, the retail person who worked in the shop was very, very just loud, obnoxious, and hard to disagree with.
You couldn't just say, "Look, thank you very much. Could you just give me back my car and I'll just go and get some assistance somewhere else. I don't like this shop."
No, two men, my husband and my son, both attempted that and did not succeed. But the story continues. 6 months later, he's broken down in the bush, had to put on the spare tyre. Guess what? The nuts are too short and wouldn't fit on the tyre.
Sorry, the nuts...
So he's had to go... the wheel.
The wheel wouldn't fit on...
So the wheel wouldn't fit on the hub.
Is that the wording? Yes, that's right.
So the wheel they sold you...
Yes.
Doesn't
fit. The rim wouldn't fit. So we've had to then go out in the bush and RACV got us going, got us to the next town, bought a new rim that was the correct size and come home.
Then go to VCAT, Yolanda. Go to VCAT and make a claim.
Well, we haven't gone back to the retailer yet because it's only just happened this week. But what sort of wording can I use to stand over these people that stand over you?
Well, the answer is you didn't. They didn't give you a tyre that was suitable for the car.
A wheel or tyre that was suitable for the purpose for which it was acquired. All right.
No technical terms I can throw at them that they cannot throw back, because what they'll say is, we'll purchase you one that's the right size. And we're like, no.
Well, you don't know what they'll say, Yolanda, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to anticipate their response.
Well, you don't have to create a new contract. We're dealing with the old one, and your argument with the old one is it doesn't work on the car.
And I have a right to ask for a refund?
You've always got a right to ask for a refund. It doesn't mean you've got a right to a refund. And in a couple of minutes, I really can't answer that question. Quite possibly you are. If it's a wheel that doesn't fit on the car, I say you are entitled to one.
Yep.
And VCAT's likely to as well. You'll need lots of photos, or even, if necessary, take in the inappropriate wheel, but you'll have to be able to satisfy with some evidence the curiosity of the member at VCAT who will want to know why it doesn't fit as well, Yolanda.
Yes.
So lots of photos showing why it doesn't work, okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Good luck, and indeed there are all sorts of issues and lots of people still waiting, I might say. Sometimes driver's licences have change of address information on the back. Police need to handle the document in order to see it. So all sorts of correspondence continuing by text message on that, David.
Which I think is reasonable. My view is that you hand it over. It's, what would you do with the old paper ones? Remember them?
I do. They used to get...
They were folded badly, John.
Well, and torn.
Yes.
And they'd come out of your wallet in 4 pieces.
Well, mine would come out covered in sticky tape. Yep. Thank you, John.
Thank you, David. David Whiting, our talkback lawyer, helping you each Tuesday after the 10 o'clock news with free legal advice.